Alright, so today, come to the side, we're going to go over everything cross-stroke to the mount. We've kind of led up to this point. We've talked throughout the week about the high mount and the low mount. We're going to review that information and then finally complete the cross-stroke. So, when I'm in the mount, we're going to classify the mount in two different positions. This right here is going to be the low mount. Now, when I move up, and you can see my heels on his hips like this is the high mount. And we have some rules associated with each one of these positions. So, in the low mount, what I need to do is three things. First thing is I need to cross my big toes, or at least touch them, underneath his butt. The main reason is, if you look here, when he tries to flatten his leg, I need to be able not to let him flatten his leg out on the ground. If my leg is just out here, he can flatten his leg on the ground and start to work his knee underneath my ankle like this. And then he's going to have a lot easier time trying to escape the mounted position. So rule number one is keep your toes underneath his butt. Now, notice that I'm going to keep the flat part of my toes on the ground here. So it's going to make it even a little bit more difficult. Now, rule number two is that I can't posture up from the low mount like I am right now. And the reason being is that when he goes to push my hips, or maybe even grab my legs, but we'll do pushing the hips now, there's no consequence for him for doing this. Where if I'm low, like this, I'm going to come underneath his head, I'm going to give him a little bit of shoulder to try and turn his head this way, and I'm going to counterbalance, which is the third thing, my weight in this direction. The reason I have to counterbalance my weight is that my arm is coming underneath his head and I'm trapping my own arm. Same principle as the basic escape where you trap an arm, you trap a leg and roll. Same idea. So when I trap my own arm underneath his neck like this, I can't have my weight just like on the center because he can potentially roll me. So my weight needs to be counterbalanced, my head low to the ground, and this one out here. So there's three things: crossing underneath his butt, staying low, and counterbalancing your weight from this position. Talking more about why he'll be able to escape here, I can't reach his neck. Once he just pushes my hips, go ahead, and he's gonna be able to get me out really quickly. And you're gonna kind of see this position from the high mount too, why it won't work when you get a good, nice high mount. When I'm low, and he tries this position, we'll get a little bit this way so you can see what's going on. He's exposing his neck now, and I have the potential to put on an Ezekiel choke while I'm delaying that position, while I'm delaying his escape by keeping my feet crossed underneath his butt. So it's exposing yourself too much to push the hips or touch the legs when I'm low, because it's always an underlying threat of an Ezekiel choke. And many people learn the Ezekiel choke as a white belt in the beginning curriculum, and they think, oh, it doesn't work on high-level guys because you try it and they're defending nice and tight. But you have to realize that the Ezekiel choke is an opportunistic move. It's not something like the cross choke, where if you use all of your base, all of your positioning, all of your weight, and all that good stuff, where you can get the cross choke eventually. It's an opportunistic move. He has to create the opportunity for you to do the Ezekiel choke. Now, talking about the high mount and how we get there, or what my strategy is to get to the high mount. Now, I'm doing the three things that I just told you. What I'm going to do from this position, he'll likely be defending his neck, but keeping his elbows in real tight, making it difficult for me to move up because the elbows are blocking. So, from this position, I'm going to grab my own sleeve like this, just in case he decides to do a quick little escape pushing my hips or my legs. Because then I already have this underneath and I can seek in that Ezekiel choke right away. So I grab this because there's no consequence. There's no reason why I shouldn't. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to open his collar. Many times he senses danger. He thinks you're going for an Ezekiel choke. But I'm actually just loosening the collar a little bit from the low mount because it's a little bit trickier from the high mount. Not impossible or anything. But it's a little bit easy to adjust it, and he thinks his neck is in danger. If he gives you no respect with his hands coming up a little bit higher, go for the Ezekiel choke. Try and really get it in there and get his respect with his hands, because his hands will go kind of like from here, preventing you from kind of the high mount, to coming up a little bit higher to defend that Ezekiel choke. So right here, I open his collar. He's not giving me respect. I try and get this in. And now from this position, I'm gonna start to work to the high mount. The high mount is gonna be this position. I'll show you that transition just one more time, but I wanna show you where you're going before I show you how to get there. There's a couple very important details. The most important is that my heels be on his hips like this. Notice how my feet are not touching the ground like this. They're not like this like they were in the low mount. They're high like this because I have a wider range to follow his hips when he starts oomping and going crazy. This is key to the critical of the stability of the mount, is keeping your feet right on his hips. If he manages to push one down a little bit like this and it falls off his hip, guess what? I have to go back and return to the low mount. I have to start all over again. So the second thing, aside from this, and you follow him everywhere. If he oompas and raises his hips, raise your hips, see how my ankles are following him? Also, what this does is it keeps, go ahead and relax. What this does is it keeps a little distance right here, a couple inches. What I can't let him do is start to get like this. You see how his body is on my calf like this? I can't let my feet from the high mount go underneath his back. I do this all the time to create a little bit of space for me to get on my side because his leg is trapped from this position. It's a little bit easier to make space and to have a successful bridging motion. So, next thing is I need to sit all of my weight right on his diaphragm. So I remove the weight on my knees and I put it all on his chest. So if you're a bigger person, that's even going to be more of an advantage to you. Now when I'm in the high mount, I can either be postured high like this, or when I'm driving for the lead hand of my cross choke, I can be low on the ground with my head on the ground like that. So there's two positions that are acceptable. The reason that the pushing on the hips doesn't work as effectively is because he has difficult finding leverage to be able to push me off, and I'm going to be able to come down a little bit. It just doesn't quite work the same because he needs to get his knees underneath. He needs to get all the way to this position for me to get out. Okay? So, what we're going to practice right now is we're going to start in the low mount. Go ahead and raise your right here. I'm going to counterbalance my weight, stay low, turn his head, and toes crossed underneath the butt. I'm going to grab my own sleeve and start working open his collar. This is going to make our second and third moves today a little bit easier. Now I open his collar. If he doesn't give me the respect, I try and go for the Ezekiel choke. Now I'm going to come to the high mount. Now I'm going to speak about the transition. Because many times you can't just move up and expect to be in this great position. As he can probably feel, I don't know if you can see if it captures the nuance of it, but I'm a little bit lower now. I need to kind of do a final cinch up to get that high mount position. And here's how I'm going to do it. Fake the Ezekiel choke here. Now, with this hand that was underneath his neck, I'm going to use it to block his shoulders so I can walk a little bit higher like this. So use it so he can't keep moving in this direction because he's going to be trying to hip out. With his arms over my quadriceps like this, that creates many battles he needs to win before he needs to get out of the mounted position. He needs to get on his side and get this elbow in underneath like this. And that's a difficult battle to win, okay? And then on top of that, he has to get out of the mounted position. So this is what we're gonna do. We're just gonna practice transitioning from the low mount to the high mount, loosen the collar a little bit so your cross choke is a little bit easier because you never know where the collar is. It could be just in a strange position where it's kind of difficult to get that lead hand in. Just kind of adjust it so it's in that comfortable position for you to feed in your lead hand of the cross choke in the next move. Okay? Go ahead and partner up with somebody about your same size. Alright, so sometimes people ask, when you're in the high mount like this, what about the one where you can bring his legs up real high? And it is tricky to do that from this position even though you're in the higher mount, because if you sit all the weight on his diaphragm, he needs some degree of core flexibility to be able to swing his legs all the way up underneath my armpits. Usually if he does get it, if he's really flexible, he'll just like barely touch your armpits and you just kind of grab something for starters and you can swim your arms in if he's able to do that move, okay? So once we get this position, we're not going to be in it for very long with a postured high mount. What we're going to look to do is immediately look to set up the lead hand of the cross choke. Now what I like to do, I don't like my gi in getting in, in my way or anything, so I open up my gi and I even turn my belt around. I don't want any sort of obstacle right here, because right here is going to be my entry point. Now, the same principles of counterbalancing apply when I try and set this lead hand of the cross choke as when my hand was underneath. When I start to drive this hand underneath his hands like this, my weight needs to be in this direction. Now, key at this point is your ability to keep your feet on his hips. That's really important, and keep them high like this off the ground so your toes are making a nice vertical line. I'm emphasizing this a lot because it's really important right here. And notice from the high mount, a better view is this angle. When I'm postured up in the high mount, my legs kind of squeeze a little bit under his armpits. But that's going to change once I start to drive my lead hand in. They're going to get a little wider. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the point where he's not protecting. He's going to be protecting a lot like this. And I'm squeezing a little bit with my heels at this point. I counterbalance my weight this way. And now I'm going to touch his chest. I'm not even focused on making a grip. If you make a grip at this point, if you're focused on trying to make the grip the entire way, you're gonna find it's just another traffic jam with cloth and material. You have his hands to deal with. Now another thing is that this step can take 30 seconds or so because you have to beat his hands. The key step here is beating his hands. And what I mean by beating his hands is my hand needs to be underneath both of his hands. I can't be like this, where I beat this hand but not this hand, or over the top of both of them, because you're not choking anybody from that position. Okay? So he's playing real tight. I go to the chest. Now, I'm going to drive my head diagonally this way, and I'm going to drive in with my body weight, keeping this in. Some people like to make, a straight hand like this and a fist. I do both because it kind of depends on where his fingers are and everything. I can't give you one for both situations, but I like to start with my fist, and then if I need to, I can drive in this way. And you really scrape his chest. Now, from this position, when I get what I call just a jump grip, any old grip, I beat his hands and then I make any grip that I can make. Doesn't matter if it's good or bad, doesn't matter if you're gonna choke him from this position. Because with my head on the ground, I'll move my head over even though my head's gonna be here so you can see. I'm gonna take my other hand and I'm gonna adjust that grip with my head on the ground, like this. Now, it's important to say that when I drove down, I'm removing the weight off his diaphragm. They're going to my knees, and my knees are gonna spread a little bit wider for stability. Okay, so you're only in this high mount posture position until you need to kind of clear your gi out and start driving forward with your weight counterbalanced. This is the point where you can expect an oompa. Expect an oompa in this direction from this point. The stability is gonna come in your heels on his hips, okay? So right here I drive in, my head on the ground, and I beat both hands before I even worry about making a grip. Now I make any old grip I can, and then I work to tighten it from this position. Now, this is important. I'm gonna posture back up, and I'm gonna glue my whole forearm to his chest, and all of my body weight is gonna be right there. This is gonna help deal with the oompa. The biggest arch enemy of the cross choke from the mount is gonna be the oompa. So it always needs to be, because you're trapping one arm. And eventually you're trapping kind of both arms, and the stability is key. The choke is easy, it's the positioning. All right here. Now I posture up as high as I can without removing any weight from my forearm. You see, if I posture up, this removes. You go as high as you can, counterbalanced as much as you can with keeping his arm on your forearm, all of your weight on his chest. If you notice, my knees are very light and I don't have any weight on his diaphragm. That will exude a lot of control when you have the guy in that position. So one last time. You're in the high mount. Start from the low mount, this whole thing. You can't practice this enough because it's just nuance of base that you're practicing.